faithful Niner Empire. What's good? You know who it is. It's your boy, Jay in the Bay. Hopefully, everyone's having a fabulous start to their weekend. But the 49ers DC coach search is over. As we know, at the end of the Super Bowl, the 49ers fired defensive coordinator Steve Wilks. He had been with the 49ers for a year. Some thought the firing was justified. Some thought that Steve Wilks was the scapegoat. But Kyle Shanahan and did not trust Steve Wilks, and that's why he fired him, and he wanted to get a different defensive coordinator. Well, the 49ers searched both internally and externally for the defensive coordinator role. They interviewed a few coaches with the Raiders, a coach with the Kansas City Chiefs on the defensive side of the ball. So this wasn't just an internal interview process. The 49ers looked far and wide to get the best candidate for the job. And it seemed like the 49ers wanted someone who knew the system that we run. But specifically for me, it seemed like it was more play calling, like specific play calling that would give the defensive lineman the best advantage to rush the passer, but also not leave the secondary on an island. So the 49ers looked inside eventually, and now they have promoted Nick Sorensen. He's been with the team for about 2 years. He's the team's defensive pass game specialist and nickel cornerbacks coach, and he's held that role for a few years now. The 49ers also hire Brandon Staley as an assistant head coach. We know that Anthony Lynn held that position last season, and now Anthony Lynn is with the Washington Commanders. Now, if you're asking yourself, well, who is Nick Sorensen? Now, Nick Sorensen has been with the team the last 2 seasons. He was with the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2021 as a special teams coach. Before that, he was an assistant special teams coach and assistant defensive back coach and secondary coach for 8 years with the Seattle Seahawks under Pete Carroll. He's never been a coordinator, so this will be an interesting hire, but he does have the assistance of Brandon Staley, who's been a defensive coordinator, who's been a head coach. Brandon Staley was a part of the Rams Super Bowl team as the defensive coordinator. He struggled with the LA Superchargers, and their defense wasn't as effective, and that seems to be Brandon Staley's signature as defense. So maybe a change of scenery, maybe less responsibility is best for Brandon Staley so he could hone in on the defensive side of the ball, and he doesn't have to be the everything head coach. Some guys, that's not their best role on an NFL team. Sometimes it's just best to be an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator and not have the responsibility of being a head coach. So I just want to say congrats to Nick Sorensen and Anthony Staley, or excuse me, Brandon Staley, for getting the promotion from the 49ers. Nick Sorensen is now the defensive coordinator. Brandon Staley has been added on as a assistant coach, but I would imagine he's going to be working with Nick Sorensen. Nick Sorensen doesn't have the defensive coordinator experience. He's never called plays before, but Brandon Staley has, and I'm sure they will be working side by side. They're going to be helping each other out. So congrats to those two gentlemen. Also, Nick Sorensen, he did play in the league as well for multiple seasons over, I believe, like an 8 to 10 year period, Nick Sorensen. So he is a player who has played on the defensive side of the ball. He's played in special teams. So he knows the game inside and out. So do I like the hire? I think it's a solid hire. You keep someone who's already been in the building, who already knows the scheme. I think he should be able to bring out the best in the defensive line because last year, you could argue, the defensive line was underwhelming for the amount of talent that we had on the squad and the amount of money that's already been allocated to the defensive line. We know we had Nick Bosa, who missed training camp due to a holdout. Also, he didn't have as productive of a start to the season as we would have liked, but hopefully he'll be in a full training camp next offseason. and Bosa will be back to the Defensive Player of the Year, All-Pro candidate that we know and love. We also had Javon Hargrave, who I thought was solid. And of course, our Eric Armstead, who missed a few games at the end of the season, but hopefully Nick Sorensen can get the most out of this defensive line. And Faithful, what do you guys think about this hire?